Yes, I'd love to go grab you, but I don't want to get up.
Hello, peoples of the internet. I'm this villain. I'm here with brother. We are playing, or I am playing Chaos Ed.
I have to go.
Should be working. Should be okay. It is working. He's getting pup. Once he gets pup, I will start. Really? Are you serious?
Advertisement.
Yeah, for a show called Clarice. Are you make something original? Jeez.
Hi.
Persona 5. Haven't seen anything about that show.
That's the skin I haven't seen before.
What?
That's something I haven't seen before.
Yeah, it's the Baptiste skin. It's the week 1.
It's like a gargoyle.
It's the week 1 reward for the Lunar New Year that you didn't participate in. You don't want to pick up the boxes you knocked over? How rude. Go in my room, knock over my stuff, you don't even pick it up. How rude. You knocked over my shirt, too. How rude. You need to keep this thing non-wrinkled. What?
Hey, okay.
What is this? Oh. Just that prepaid phone I got found earlier. Alright. Alright. Go ahead and get this over here. Flip screens. Hello. Hello. Start that up. And load.
There. Ah, yes. Going right into the intermission scene.
Yep, I like to leave it on a cliffhanger for this game. Middle of everything, take a break.
The first melt.
The first melt has ended with results that surpassed our expectations.
当初の予測からわずかな誤差があった程度です。
What's a GE?
He'll tell you.
バイオリズムコントロールも順調なのかね。
Biorhythm?
の GE レートは他のエリアと比べて高い値を持っていると同時に安定性についても特筆したものがあります。
これゆえに意図的に操作しやすいということか。そして渋谷にいる人々のバイオリズムを急激に引き上げることもまた。
結果についてはレポートをご参照ください。納得していただける成果を上げております。
貴様が成果を出すのは当然だ。そのために高い金と多くの人材を提供しているのだからな。
構成については理解しているよ。この数ヶ月だけでも我が会の信者が数倍に膨れ上がっているからね。
では、プロジェクトノアは次の段階へと進ませます。よろしいですね。
Why does it sound like the guy just kept talking and they had to cut his dialogue? It seems like every time it starts, it doesn't start like...
サンプルの件はどうするの
Like that?
Yeah.
すでに3人分は確保したと
It just sounds so
目標数値に
unnatural.
は達しておらんではないか。
Take a look at the company.
Nozomi?
One of those is auto mode. Pink one, I believe.
How long does it take for it to go?
A little bit. It will take. I mean, you can shorten length and.
数値達成のためには最低でも5人分はなければ厳しい。
You can shorten the length between the delay.
I was about to say it's like it's just taking forever.
Yeah, I mean they give you ample time to read along with it by default, but I shortened it in mine. Configuration C.
Oh, there it is. I'm sorry, I'm not used to reading
So
this screen.
it'd be on the first one. Message speed, wait time between words and auto.
Be this one, right?
Yeah, move it up a little bit. To the right.
Move it to there.
Right click. No.
サンプル保持者は集まりつつあります。あとは採取するのみ。
だばその件は任せる。
この救いあれ。くれぐれも慎重にことを
Divine
進め
light
るよ
save you.
心得ております。
See, it still sounds like they were cut off. Like,
Look, it's an old game. Give it a break. This is the first game they made.
そろそろ寝るか。
it was 5 in the morning when I checked my PC clock, biting back a yawn. Today, too, I'd spent ages hunting an ESO, but no monsters had dropped the rare item I'd been looking for. No success, even after pulling an 8-hour marathon. Well, but this kind of thing happened a lot.
Post Awakening Sarah.
I glanced quickly at the side of my desk. There leaned the D-sword I bought yesterday. I'd left it close enough that I could take it up at any time. On a side note, the sword didn't radiate any light whatsoever. I was hoping that sooner or later it would metamorphose into one with a cool shape as Senna's, but as cool a shape as Senna's, but inside my mind, her Grimm's avatar happened to be right in the middle of leveling up. My Neidhart had reached the maximum level, so he wouldn't be going any higher. Rubbing my sleepy eyes, I thought to myself that maybe I was getting it was getting to be time for me to create my next character, the third after Lissalette. Experience points, huh? It was a familiar enough concept in RPGs, but I thought experience points also exist in real life. No, they do not.
/r/outside.
When I first started ESO, even I was a baby who didn't know right from left, but now I could boast of being the strongest in Baselard. With my name of Neidhart der Blitznell known throughout the land. For example, it wasn't unthinkable that the person behind me might, by some chance, happen to lose some of the experience points he'd built up. Then maybe it would be all too natural for me to forget things I'd known. Maybe the fuzziness of my memories could be traced back to the same source.
Maybe because the guy playing the game didn't play often enough.
And then there was Shogun and the Demon Girl. Before my experience points got cleared, perhaps it had been perfectly normal for me, the person behind me, to post under the handle of Shogun in chats, and to spend time IRL with the Demon Girl, with Remy. No, that was certainly improbable. But in the past, I might have possessed a power capable of letting me square off with that Demon Girl. I'm going to note, and this is just me, but it seems like he should have used the bracelet with the sword. He didn't try that at all. And I don't know about you.
This is the activation thing.
Yeah, I mean, every magical sword in every anime has two pieces. Like, it has
There's something
the
that
sword
there's
itself
like a
and the
catalyst,
trigger.
You know?
Exactly. And I'm probably absolutely wrong because it's probably just some prop sword. But, you know, you never wore the bracelet. You're just like, oh, this thing's stupid. It's not my style. You never gave it a try, douche.
He doesn't know the way.
You don't know the way. For a guy that plays video games, you sure are stupid. Was I the only person that had thoughts like this? Although I also felt like it wasn't a particularly strange or mysterious way of thinking. Because the only thing human beings have to go by are the fundamental standards they've come up with all on their own. Maybe even now not just me, but everyone in the whole world was judging everything wrong while living out my day-to-day life. When I was little and went to the dentist, he told me, "You're a good boy for putting up with so much pain." At the time, it made me think I was kind of amazing for enduring the pain all the way through, and I simply became proud of myself. Thinking back on it now, however, that comment had probably been based on judging the degree of pain by the relative progression of the cavity. But even with the exact same level of pain, there might be people who could bear it and people who couldn't. In other words, I suspected that people might be utterly different in how they recognized and experienced such sensations. Take giving birth, for instance. Online, I'd often seen people saying that though women are able to hold out through the pain of labor, it would be inherently impossible for men. Take marathon runners, for instance. Maybe they excel not because of the power of their bodies, but instead because of their ability to endure pain. Take sadists and masochists, for instance. If there are people who enjoy hurting others, then there are also those who feel pleasure when others hurt them. In short, I figured that the way people felt things and the strength of their inner nature, their ability to put up with it, varied from person to person. Perhaps the level of pain and the toothaches and headaches I endured from time to time, in truth, far surpassed the range of pain an ordinary person could take. And if I passed the same level of pain on to someone else in the same manner as a relay runner passing it on his baton, the agony of it would make them go into shock and die. The conclusion this led to was the selfish delusion that maybe I was a very special type of human being.
特殊な人間か。っていうか、何を大げさな。
Though I'd rejected that idea, surely everyone had these kinds of delusions. Every man longs to be the strongest in the world. Everyone wants to think they're special, that they've been chosen.
I don't know if everyone has the kinds of illusions you do, but
They want to think a dramatic, stormy life, like in TV shows and movies, is waiting for them in the future. It was the so-called yearning to be a hero, to put it more crudely, being self-centered. Of course, I, too, had those kinds of delusions. Indeed, it might be my destiny to defeat the demon girl. Then, if I were told to carry that out in real life, I'd require that a number of conditions be met first. At least, the one thing I really needed was the ability to use cheat codes for stuff like secret attacks or perhaps invincible mode. I didn't want to undergo any pain or fear. If I couldn't do that, if, in other words, I was supposed to do it with my own power, I definitely wouldn't. Which is why, if the person behind me accidentally let my experience points get wiped, it could cause me tremendous damage.
okay, dude. Nice monologue, bro.
Today I got to school just in time not to be late. I guess it was indeed unreasonable to play online games till morning on a day when I had school. I wouldn't have made it if I hadn't run. When I reached the front of my classroom, I breathed deeply to collect myself. I mustn't do anything to draw my classmates' attention. For me, coming late would be a fatal mistake. My life would implode as soon as some juvie set his eyes on me. I eased my way into the classroom. My face was lowered. I mustn't lock eyes with anybody. Of course, I didn't give them any kind of thoughtless greeting like good morning. I turned myself into air so as to make the others pick up on my existence as little as possible and headed for my seat. I always did things this way. And today as well, I made it to my seat without encountering any problems and lowered myself into it.
Surprise.
I soon plastered myself flat against my desk. At this rate, I'd be safe until homeroom started, but I only relaxed for a breath until someone tapped me lightly on the back. Well, it must be Remy.
よ、タク。今週は3回も学校来てんじゃねえか。真面目だな。
Misumi-kun, again. Though I was kind of sick of him, I'd feel bad for ignoring him, so I started to raise my head and hesitated. Was this Misumi-kun, the real one? The day before yesterday, I'd done as the demon girl told me and called him. At the time, he'd acted undeniably strange. To begin with, he'd answered by saying that the demon girl was our classmate, as if this were perfectly normal, even though I knew it wasn't so. Maybe the demon girl had brainwashed the current Misumi-kun. On the contrary, there was also the possibility that she'd switched him with someone else.
おい、どうした？早くも爆睡モードか？
An electronic sound suddenly rang through the classroom. I sensed a faint vibration near my chest. It was my cell phone. Shit, how of all times? What kind of idiot would call at a time like this? On top of that, even though I was sure I'd set it to vibrate, the ringtone was ringing at the same time. I must have messed up the settings. So I gotta ban someone. Gotta ban fast. Gotta ban fast. Alright.
Was someone spamming? Was someone spamming?
Basically, yeah. It's a common spam thing. It's a way to hack your account. Oh, you want to be famous? Click this link. You can buy followers. No, you just ban them.
お、鳴ってるぞ、タク。
I know that much. Should I hurry up and answer it? Yes! But if I did, Misumi-kun would know I'd only been pretending to sleep. Besides, I didn't like talking on the phone.
Hang up.
Except if I didn't pick it up, it would bother the rest of the class. Judging by how my ringtone was reverberating through the classroom right now, things were pretty damn bad. I wasn't supposed to stand out. This was incredibly bad. Answer the fucking phone, dude. Oh my gosh.
おーい、
Hang up.
出ないのか？マジで寝てる？
Shit. While I wavered over what to do, I'd completely lost my chance. I couldn't move. Just then, the sound and vibration died down. They must have switched to voicemail. I let out a relieved breath in such a way as to keep Misumi-kun from catching me at it. I'd been right to learn how to use voicemail.
なあ、タク。相手は誰だ？まさか女か？この前一緒に帰ったあのメガネの子だろ。そうなんだろ？
Damn it, you're so noisy. Please don't do anything more to interfere with me, because that phone call already made me stand out more than I should have. Had Misumi-kun always been this persistent? Though his forwardness remained the same, I felt like he'd been a little more sensitive in the past. Dude, you are so
や
irritating.
めなよ。
I heard that voice from close by
そっとして
Misumi-kun.
おいてあげたら大臣。なんだか疲れてるみたいだし。
She was in this classroom as though it were natural for her to be here.
どうせゲームのやりすぎだろ。お前タクに甘すぎるぜ。
だって大臣は女の敵だし。そういう人には優しくしません。
She was chatting away as though it were natural for her to do so. She was blending in as though it were natural for her to belong with us. I was too horrified to raise my head. I didn't want to acknowledge the fact that she was here.
ま、別にお前に優しくしてもらわなくても、俺には優しくしてくれる女はたくさんいるんだよ。
だからそういう発言が良くないんだってば。彼女さんが聞いたら泣くよ。今の大臣の彼女が誰だかわかんないけど。ほら、チャイム鳴った。先生来るよ。
Had the demon girl truly been my classmate from the beginning? No, that was impossible. How would you know? 2 days ago, she hadn't been here. At least the only person who'd come to talk to me that day was Misumi-kun. Yesterday, I hadn't come to school. And today, she was here. How had she wormed her way in? When the chime signaling the start of homeroom rang, everyone took their seats. Sensing that, I gingerly raised my head. I surveyed my surroundings with my eyes alone. So I'm going to note something I love about something like this, okay? So the characters that we've seen thus far, there's a blonde-haired girl, another blonde-haired girl. I don't know what color my character's hair is.
Blue.
I don't know what my character's hair is because I haven't seen it. Shush. I know it's blue, but shush. A pink-haired girl, a white-haired girl, a dark purple-haired girl. But every time that you see background characters, it's all browns.
It's almost like there's different people doing the backgrounds and the character model.
Yeah.
It's the same way with all their games, actually. All the background characters are incredibly generic. And then there's the main characters.
That's just anime. Yeah, that's just anime in general.
It's really weird, some shows that do have background characters. It's like, dude, you could be the main character in a show. Look at you. You're like... And then there's other shows that have such a generic-looking main characters. It's like,
I wanted the voice from earlier to be an illusion. To prove that to myself, I had to make sure the girl wasn't anywhere in this classroom. I didn't see her. I didn't see that girl's form anywhere. Had she been an hallucination after all? She's behind you. My seat was in the 5th row from the front. There were 9 rows in total. She wasn't in any of the rows in front of me.
you're sure she's right.
Which meant behind me? But I couldn't turn around. I couldn't do something so likely to catch others' attention. Shit, I felt incredibly fidgety. Was she really in here or not? My neck muscles weren't prickling. No one was looking at me. I didn't feel a gaze. Wasn't she? Which one? Staring steadily down at the top of my desk, I attempted to search out that girl's existence by her presence alone. Can you grab me a blanket? There's a nail over here and it's stabbing me in the leg. And it hurts. Big red blanket. Yeah, that one. Hold this for a sec. comforter. Nobody said I was getting rid of the pillow. Need that for my elbows. See? Elbows. Right then, I heard the sound of our homeroom teacher entering the classroom. I had forgotten his name. I had the feeling that it'd been something like Tsukaji or Sukada. He was a PE teacher who'd graduated from a PE college, a total musclehead. But he wasn't hot-blooded and didn't use corporal punishment. If I had to put it one way or the other, I'd say he was the type to get a joke. For some reason, the class started going into a commotion, but at the moment, my attention was completely occupied by seeking out the demon girl. Like I could possibly detect her through her presence alone. This wasn't a manga. Was I a fool or what?
Oh yeah, this is totally not an anime.
今日から転校生が入ることになった。
Yay, new transfer student.
The teacher muttered, I see. That was the reason there'd been a fuss.
ほら、折原、みんなに挨拶しろ。
Orihara. I haven't heard the transfer student speak. Was there really someone there? I cast a look at the teacher's podium. Blonde. There was someone there, no doubt. She was remarkably small, maybe even more of a runt than Nanami. She was the moe type who looked a little timid and gave off an aura of having been bullied. I'd say she reached the so-so level for a 3D girl. For some reason, she was facing down and the corners of her eyes were full of tears.
Goes away.
My classmates' commotions increased in response to the fact that she wasn't trying to say anything. Our teacher patted her on the shoulder considerately.
どうやら折原は緊張しているようだな。よし、挨拶はいい。みんな、この子は折原梢だ。仲良くしてやってくれ。折原、席は一番後ろだ。席についていいぞ。
Without saying a single word, the transfer student bowed her head and began walking my way. Her seat was 4 rows behind mine. I wondered if I should pretend to watch the transfer student walk to the back in order to check the faces of the people in the rows behind me. But that itself would be fairly attention-grabbing behavior. There was also the dread that the delinquents might pick a meaningless fight with me, saying, don't start drooling over the transfer student just because you think she's cute. What should I do? Should I turn around or wait, or would it be better to wait until homeroom ended? I hung my head and clenched my fists. It was no good. I didn't have the guts to do it. What if I turned around and my eyes met the girl's? The thought of it made me shudder.
この人、似てる。
Her voice undoubtedly had reached my ears. The transfer student passed close by my desk. Before I knew it, I'd unconsciously raised my face. The transfer student paused behind my desk for the barest of seconds, but she didn't turn towards me.
同じクラスでよかった。
That was all. The transfer student soon retreated further and further away from my seat. Had she been speaking to me? Why had she started talking to me all of a sudden? I resembled her? She was glad we were in the same class? Had we met up once before? No, I had absolutely no recollection of her face. Unlike in certain I didn't have a childhood friend I'd played together with in the distant past. Was I becoming popular with girls after all? No.
Yes, because you're a Chad.
Or else, what was that transfer student too one of the demon girl's subordinates? If so, the dragnet had tightened around me yet again. I was in the midst of running out of places to flee to. You know, I have absolutely no idea what you mean by a total Chad.
All the girls keep surrounding him.
Homeroom came to a sudden end while I thought frantically about the new doubts that had arisen in my head. There were about 5 minutes until the first period class started. Sumikun was charging towards transfer student's seat. It looked like he meant to start hitting on her out of left field. My other classmates also seemed deeply interested in her, and the classroom had grown more wild and boisterous than usual. At a glance, it appeared to be a nonchalant, peaceful tableau. But to me, it was virtually the same as being behind enemy lines. My heartbeat wouldn't calm down. My whole body was tense, and it took immense courage for me to move even a single finger. My impulse to turn around poured with my reason, which told me I mustn't. I almost stopped breathing. The inside of my head went pure white. I heard her voice from close behind me. She really was here. She really existed in this place.
具合悪そうだけど、平気?
Run. You've got to run. No matter how I thought of it, my legs were trembling, and it didn't seem like I'd be able to stand up well. While I stayed frozen, the demon girl, Sakihata Rimi, circled around in front of my desk.
汗びっしょり。風邪でもひいたんじゃない?
In the same way as 2 days ago, she spoke to me as though she were worried for me. In the same way as 2 days ago, she held out a handkerchief with a soft floral scent to it. Instead of accepting it, I hastily wiped my sweat with my head. And sorry.
何?
Lenny.
I couldn't meet her eyes, though I could tell from the tone of her voice that she was smiling.
ねえねえ、さっき何話してたの?
Rumi crouched in place so her eyes were on the same level as mine and propped her chin on her hands. She took a peek at my face. I desperately averted my eyes. Damn it, she seemed determined not to let me escape. My anxiety threatened to tear open my heart. Somebody save me.
すっごく気になる。
What was she talking about? Who had said what to
転校
me?
生。あの子がタクの机の横を通るときに小声でさ、ボソボソーっと。この人似てる。同じクラスでよかった。もしかしてあの子と知り合い?
Wouldn't you like to know?
Rumi was still smiling, but was it my imagination that her voice had started shifting into more of a demanding tone, like she was interrogating me?
タクってリアルの女の子に興味ないんじゃなかったっけ? もしかして本当は興味あるの?
What do you plan to do after asking that? Did she mean to pump me for personal information, then abuse it?
Oh yes, abuse me, Remy.
To begin by stating the conclusion, I'm not interested in 3D girls. I always said that sourly.
じゃあさ、私にも実は興味あったりする?
A chill ran down my back. Though I had just wiped it, fresh sweat sprang up on my forehead. Had that been an advance notice that she would kill me? Or was the demon girl inviting me to become her comrade? Or else did she intend to seduce me and trap me by acting moe?
Who's to say she isn't Moe? You can be Moe and be a murderer? Come on.
The danger signals rang on and on in my head. Don't talk with demon any longer, otherwise she'll destroy me. I was frantic. I managed to stand up hastily and dash out of the classroom, running into other people's desks here and there along the way. I ran up the stairs without looking to either side and came out on the empty roof. It looked as though she hadn't chased me. Even so, I couldn't let myself feel relieved yet, and so I hugged my knees and hid for some time in the shadows. My knees were trembling. I couldn't believe I'd succeeded in running in this condition. It showed how desperate I'd been. I was sick of this reality. The D-sword I'd gone out of my way to buy hadn't been useful in any capacity. I certainly couldn't bring it to school, not with how much it'd stand out here. She'd caught me off guard. 2 days ago, when I heard from Miss Sumikun that Rimi was our classmate, I'd figured that he'd either been making it up on the spot or had merely been imagining things. You know, there is another possibility that he is right, but she really became my classmate. It would almost definitely prove useless to ponder how she had managed to slip in. Because she was a demon, she could easily do things which humans were incapable. Maybe she had brainwashed my whole class. No, maybe even all the teachers at school. I couldn't go to the hospital anymore, and now I couldn't go to school. Yua was at cafe, and Shogun appeared online. She and her underlings were clearly venturing closer and closer to me, and they were constantly launching psychological attacks at me. That's just what an alternate personality would say. Maybe it would be better to stop leaving my base. Reality was too full of danger and enemies. They stirred me up and threatened my peaceful lifestyle when all I wanted to do was live quietly.
What are you, a hobbit?
I gazed up at the blue sky, which floated there carelessly as the wind blew white clouds across it. It would be so wonderful if I could become one of those clouds. Three hours passed.
And you're still on the rooftop!
The whole time I stayed curled up in the same place, unmoving. For now, I didn't sense anyone else coming up. Here, I had at least been freed from my strain. The problem was what came after this. During break, students would, without doubt, come up here to eat their lunches. That was why making a break for it in the middle of fourth period and returning to my base at top speed was the best option. I'd mess up my minimum attendance shift chart, but I possessed not a trace of the courage needed to return to the classroom where the demon girl lay in wait. I decided not to worry about the fact that I'd left my bag in the classroom. She's going to deliver it back home. Whatever the case, all I had in there were textbooks, my wallet, my key, and anything else important would be in my uniform's pockets, probably.
Oh, just my wallet, my keys, everything important.
Growing uneasy, I searched through my pockets. Wallet, key, cell phone, they were all where they should be.
Oh, just the textbooks over there, okay.
That was when I remembered that someone had called me. I'd been pretty frantic at the time, though not as much as when Rimi talked to me.
一体誰だ?
I couldn't think of anyone who would call me besides my family. Nanami seemed like the most probable. She didn't think about whether she might end up causing me trouble. The other people who knew this number were, come to think of it, I told those detectives if it had been one of them, I should probably have answered it. And anyway, all that talk about sending officers to my base had ended up going unsettled. The caller's phone number was displayed on the LCD screen. It appeared not to be Nanami. When I looked more closely, I saw that I had a new voicemail. I had the vague feeling that I might or might not have seen this number before, just in case I checked the history of calls. Only 5 calls were displayed there. Green. In other words, since the time when I first bought the cell phone, only these 5 calls had reached it, plus 3 of them were Nanami. Now, as for the remaining 2, the one from a little earlier and the one from 5 days before were displayed as numbers instead of names, since they hadn't been recorded in my address book. It was the same number, 03X733. If they'd bothered to leave a message, it might have been someone who very much wanted to convey something to me. For now, I might as well listen to it.
あのさ、私だけど別にあんたの声が聞きたいから電話したわけじゃないんだからね。なんとなく暇だったからとかその程度の理由だから、わかった？
Should I recognize this voice?
でもクラスが別になって最近話す機会が少なくなったね。あんた私のことどう思ってるわけ？例えばさ、
Wait, is this supposed to be
会って
Yua?
みようとか思わないわけ？
I don't recognize the voice.
別にあんたに告られたからって私は嬉しくもなんともないんだからね。そもそも
Being Tsundere.
私が OK する保証は万に一つ
I really should have done this game without any delusions,
で
honestly.
もさ、行動しなくちゃ何にも始まらないって思わない？とにかくあんたは試しに告
Or
っ
at
て
the
み
very
る
least, you should save before delusion, so if you don't like the answer, you can try to a different delusion or something, you know?
伝説の木の下で待ってるから急いで来なさいよ。来なかったら承知しないんだからね。
It could happen. Nah, it couldn't at all. We don't have a legendary tree or whatever at our school. Who is this Tsundere supposed to be anyway?
Yeah, it's just a nobody.
I hadn't tried hard enough with respect to the character setting. I should have at least made her to be Seraton. It's not the same. It's not the time to be having daydreams, is it? Feeling hollow, I let out a sigh and decided to listen to the real voicemails.
Oh boy, buckle in.
I scoped out my surroundings, verifying the demon girl wasn't there, then put the phone in my ear.
こちらは留守番電話サービスセンターです。新しいメッセージは1件です。1件目、10月17日金曜日午前8時28分の伝言です。
なんぞこれ。
Rather than anyone's voice, what I heard was a deeply familiar melody. I had the sense that it was ringing out from a slight distance. Perhaps the person on the other end of the line had been near a traffic light. The song was often played as pedestrian crosswalks in order to let people with visual disabilities know when the light turned green. And by the way, it was a children's song called Let Me Pass. Though a lot of people knew the melody, far fewer knew the lyrics. On a side note, I know them because I'd learned them in middle school. Well, but it wasn't as though I'd remembered them perfectly. Let me pass, let me pass. Where will this path take me? It's the path in the Tension Shrine. Will you please let me pass? Not if you have no business here to celebrate my child turning 7. I've come to present a tithe. Going there is easy, but coming home is... Sound like coming home was beep boop beep boop. It wasn't very spacious. What with how it reminded me of an ambulance. It must have been a coincidence, but it was creepy at the same time. The instant after the traffic signal's melody got cut off, there came a massive high-volume sound akin to that of a buzzer. It was so loud I didn't waste a second taking the phone away from my ear. When I gingerly returned the phone to my ear, the message had already finished playing. What had it been? At the very end, I might have faintly heard a roar like the ground rumbling. That buzzer was something completely separate from the melody of the traffic light. For it to have such tremendous volume, all I could assume was that the phone's receiver had been deliberately placed close to the source of the sound.
Itazura?
My heart began to race when I thought of that. Had I done anything to earn somebody's dislike? Who had made this call to me anyway? I could return the call using the number displayed on my phone, but I wouldn't be able to bring myself to redial a prank caller. In the end, my only available choice was to leave it be. Besides, my current situation was far worse than a prank call like this. I put the phone away in my pocket and left school, carefully observing the lay around me all the while. Here. Dog. Put me out here.
McDonald's. Nishijo Takumi's alma mater. Taking Kirizawa Elementary School. It's about 5 minutes walking distance from the private railways.
Okay. Nishijo Takumi's alma mater, second Kitazawa Elementary School, was about 5 minutes walking distance from a private railway station. Thinking that he'd like to speak with the teacher who had been responsible for Nishijo Takumi during elementary school, Bon Yasuji attempted to contact him via phone, but was told that, sadly, he had passed away. Oh. Bon, resorting to speaking instead with the one who had answered the phone, the head teacher, Kaimo went to the school together with his partner. It was a Saturday. The school gates were closed. The two detectives, Bon and Suwa, stopped there and looked over at the school building. An extraordinary, eye-catching, brilliantly colored mural was painted on the white outer wall. Without any knowledge of art or aesthetics, Bon had no idea what it signified, but the way the spiral-shaped painting changed to 7 different colors as it went from top to bottom reminded him of a rainbow. While Bon gazed at the mural and fanned himself with his handheld fan, his partner Suwa pressed the intercom button near the school's gates.
Moshi.
Bon abruptly looked around. He had the feeling that someone was watching him. It was a particularly clingy and unpleasant gaze.
Whose eyes are those eyes?
Whose eyes are those
これっ
eyes?
てそんなにかっこいいか？
He tried striking a casual pose, one that was dandy, cool, refined.
先輩、何変なポーズしてるんすか？裏門の方に通用口があるんで、そっちに回ってくれって。
Is this supposed to be a software game, or is that something in universe that's about the eyes? Bond stopped posing, sighed once, and began to walk.
Sure seems self-aware a lot.
They were quick to locate the staff room. The side door led to the school's rear entrance hallway, and getting to the staff room only required turning down one corridor. Naturally, there were no children present in the building, and to the two detectives, it felt chillier than when they'd been outside. Although this could have been an illusion created by the slick linoleum floor. There were 3 teachers in the staff room. One of them rose and bowed his head upon seeing the detectives enter.
This looks just like the room from Erased.
He was cameo with a mild smile and mostly white hair. Oh, crap. Bond and Sua showed their police IDs to him almost simultaneously, then entered the topic at hand soon after a few brief greetings. It was Sua's role to ask him questions.
ここの卒業生である西条匠くんについて教えていただきたいんですが。
彼のことは印象に残っています。私は担任ではなかったから詳しくとなると無理ですが、それでも構いませんか。
Sua nodded, taking out his notebook and writing himself to jot things down.
西条くんはどんな子だったんですか？
難しい子だと聞いていました。特殊だと。
特殊？
本来なら他の生徒に混ざって勉強するのはとても困難な、病気を患っていたらしく。
具体的には？
そこまで私が言ってしまっていいのかどうか。ご家族なり医師なりに聞いていただけますか。
In recent times, all schools had begun responding with this "don't rock the boat" attitude.
Oh, his doctor.
They wouldn't cooperate fully when it came to anything that might result in a lawsuit from a parent or guardian. It made doing one's job as a policeman much harder.
Didn't they say his doctor was out for a while?
Why did his teacher pass away?
遠足の最中、乗っていたバスが陥没した道路に。
あ、自分それ知ってるっす。ニュースでやってたっすよね。
子供たちは怪我をしただけで、幸い命は助かったのですが、斉藤先生だけが犠牲になってしまい、なんともやりきれない思いです。
What do you mean retcon?
There were several kids that were like injured, and it's like,
yeah, they were injured.
Nobody died except for the teacher.
Yeah, only the teacher died. None of the kids died. That wasn't a retcon.
Why was his mom so freaked out?
Because a bunch of kids were hurt, and I'm pretty sure other people died in the collapse. But the teacher, from the school's perspective, only the teacher losing their life and the kids getting hurt is okay.
I'm pretty sure the only thing that fell down the sinkhole was the bus.
I don't think so, because it was a bridge collapse, dude.
It was just a sinkhole, and the bus is the only thing to fall into it.
We remember 2 different events.
Continue. So how are you going to get anything out of this doctor? Isn't there doctor-patient confidentiality? Besides, this doctor's been like out for like a week, hasn't he?
Doctor-patient confidentiality only goes so far, dude.
But they don't have HIPAA in Japan.
They might not even have doctor-patient confidentiality in Japan, dude. He looks free. Free falling.
Put that thing back on me.
He is fighting it. Kamiya gave a small side-to-side shake of his head in response to Bond's question.
あの子は当日欠席していてバスには乗っていませんでした。欠席の理由は病が悪化したと聞いたような覚えがありますが。
Bond, too, had a faint recollection of the accident. After the accident, glancing at the TV had shown him the mass media swarming day after day around the house of the one male child who hadn't been involved.
あれは悲しい事故だったんですよ。
For some reason, as Kamiya repeated himself, he placed a strong emphasis on the word accident. It was a custom of mine to chat with Grimm a bit before starting ESO. We didn't usually chat about anything important. We'd exchange information about interesting threads on @channel, go on and on about Eero stuff, recommend new comics to each other, or discuss the previous day's anime, casual stuff like that. Surprisingly, we didn't talk about ESO much. Why, you ask? Because we talked to death about it. We talk it to death afterward while playing on ESO. Has there been some kind of weird prank going around lately? No, I just heard about it from someone I know. But I don't know if it's really going around or not. It seems like they play weird sounds into the cell phone's voicemail. Like a Moe voice saying Eero stuff to you? Oh, no, what Eero are you thinking of?
Okay.
Whatever, that's why I don't say the frickin' words. On the contrary, wouldn't you want them to hurry up? Okay, as usual, Grimm had to go. Okay. On the contrary, wouldn't you want them to hurry up and do that to you? Heh. Well, then whose eyes are those eyes? As usual, Grimm had to go and use those words. He'd made my mood go sour in an instant. Plus, his Japanese was strange. Were those words so fascinating that they merited his shoehorned in, even when they didn't fit? At least they didn't fascinate me one bit. Far from it, they made me go cold. No point in fighting with him about it. Not before I finished asking about the prank. I simply had to put up with it. Put up with him. He tried to fight me. Like the sound of a freak otaku. That's foul. To answer you seriously, it's Let Me Pass. Let Me Pass? That's a song, right? The one played at Crosswalks? Yeah. Then, in the middle, it was suddenly switches to sound like a buzzer. Apparently, it's pretty high decibel. Ever heard of a prank like that? It seems like the kind of thing that'd be a fad at channel, doesn't it? The serious buzzer-like noise had been recorded in my voicemail yesterday. I didn't know whose handiwork it was, and something about it concerned me, so I had to go asking if Grimm had heard of it. If it were purely a prank call, all I'd have to do from here on out... Grimm wasn't reacting. I wondered why.
He's probably Googling it.
Oi. You drift off? So no reaction. It was rare for Grimm to fall asleep like this. In fact, he hadn't happened once in the past. But if he was asleep, there was no helping it. We'd meet later in ESO anyway, and I could raise the subject again then. The moment I thought that and started to rise from my seat. Oh, so that's what it had been. But in other words, it meant that even the super knowledgeable Grimm hadn't known about this prank. That suggests the prankster had done it because they harbored some kind of personal grudge against me. The identity of the caller concerned me, after all, but I wasn't gutsy enough to call back. But since I knew the phone number, I could use someone as a scapegoat and call and make them call for me.
Nanami
And Mitsumikon seemed like the best choices. No, Mitsumikon was out because he might have been brainwashed by the demon girl.
There you go. Put Nanami on the line.
Nanami was my little sister, so I wouldn't have any trouble asking her to do it. She'd probably get pissed at me afterward, but it wouldn't be my problem. Nothing wrong with making her experience societal hardship firsthand every once in a while. Can you have a kiss? I thanked Grimm, promised to meet him in ESO in a couple hours later, and closed the chat. Right then, my stomach gurgled. Man, I was hungry. Yes, I am. Did I have cup ramen stocked anywhere? I went hunting for it, but couldn't spot it anywhere. I luckily decided to go get some at a convenience store. The sun had already set. If possible, I'd have preferred to avoid walking around after dark because lately, all it had given me were nasty memories. I unthinkingly hastened my pace, hurrying down the road to the store. Today was Saturday, so I would have expected to cross paths with any number of pedestrians, but so far I hadn't encountered a single one. The stores that were always open had been closed. It was a tad strange. Go home. Go home. It's not worth going out right now. Maybe I was under the wrong impression, like thinking it was 7 p.m. when it was actually around 2 a.m. Okay, maybe not. Even so, it was far too quiet. For the most part, I couldn't hear any miscellaneous city noises. The town's ambience was different than usual.
Like completely quiet.
I arrived at the convenience store in the Shinsen Plaza. The plaza was in front of the train station, but there wasn't a single person here either. I was gradually starting to get scared. The sudden absence of something I had taken for granted, that alone was enough to give me the sense that I'd fallen into another world. Under ordinary circumstances, I skirted away from meeting with and talking to people, but right now, I just wanted to see someone's face. I ran inside the convenience store. There absolutely had to be a clerk in here, so I thought as I surveyed the store's interior. No one was there. No customer, not even the cashier. You're kidding.
Masaka.
This wasn't possible. The cashier had to be doing something in the back of the store. If I brought some goods up to the register, they'd reemerge. That's why, in the end, I took my time picking a box lunch while pretending to check out some manga magazines. I set my box lunch down by the register. No one came out. After all, maybe it was true not a single person was here. Okay, if it's like that, then... I picked up the box lunch I'd left by the register, then went straight to the automatic doors. This is a good delusion. I stood in front of the doors. It opened, and I was about to step outside.
Mate.
Oh, good person. The cashier finally came out from another room behind the register. He was a dark, bleary-looking man, probably in college. Leaning across the counter, he glared at me with dull eyes.
お前、今万引きしようとしただろ。
I shrugged my shoulders and turned back toward the register.
あんたが出てこないからでしょ。
すいません、居眠りしてました。
The clerk lowered his head to me, grinning flippantly, as if he were mocking me. Something snapped inside me. God, the store didn't teach its workers anything.
しねえ。当然タダで持って帰ってもいいよね。
は？それとこれとは別じゃないですか。
あんたの責任なんだからあんたが代金立て替えろよ。
ふざけんなニート野郎。
この
I unthinkably struck the man. My super fast straight punch hit the clerk smack on the nose. Crying out pathetically, he fell backwards, crashed into the shelves, and collapsed in place.
My super fast straight punch. Ooh.
It had been a magnificent punch, if I do say so myself.
すいません。
He fell down, started bleeding, and everyone
As
clapped.
blood gushed from his nose, the clerk prostrated himself on the floor with tears in his eyes.
お金は結構だから帰ってください。
分かればいいんだよ。
While I was at it, I grabbed 4 dorayaki bean pastries from the display in front of the register, then satisfied went back to the door.
Back to
二
you
度と
one.
来るかバカ。
Tossing back the line to snazily get in the last word, I breathed out of the store. Seven minutes passed while I fantasized. There was no indication that a cashier would appear. I had no intention of dirtying my hands with delinquent behavior like in my daydream. That said, I didn't possess the aggression needed to yell out for the cashier either. I simply stood motionless in the empty store.
Oi!
I very much wanted to believe that the clerk had dozed off, so I tried waiting another 5 minutes. But in that time, neither cashier nor any other customers had appeared. I didn't even hear any sounds.
Imagine checking out the security cam footage.
At least I became frightened. At last, I became frightened and returned the box lunch to its original shelf before leaving.
You're just staying there for 20 minutes doing nothing.
I went to a railroad crossing located close behind the station. From here, I had a good view of the Shinsen Station platform. I'd presumed that here, if nowhere else, couldn't possibly be devoid of people, but no one was there, after all. I waited for the train to come in. Once it came, there would have to be a passenger getting off. Even if no one left, I'd see them riding in the train as it passed before me. I waited for 10 minutes, and still no train came. I tried to make myself think that there had been a fatal accident, one that had messed up the train schedules, but as before, no customers whatsoever emerged onto the platform.
Oh, yeah.
Having come to this point, I finally realized the gravity of the situation. Strange, this was bizarre. Oh yeah, I should try going to Shibuya Station. People would definitely be there, no doubt about it. 24 hours a day, it didn't matter when, people were always, without a fail, at the Shibuya Station Plaza. You know, I'm just gonna state, You should not go to the Shibuya Station Plaza.
Do.
You should not. That is my suggestion. Don't go there.
Why is something gonna happen?
Where's all the weird stuff happening?
Jensen?
Shibuya. Why would you go to Shibuya? I broke into a run without a moment's hesitation. I ran as if my life depended on it. I didn't want to stop, even when my breath came short. It might have been the first time I'd run with all my might since I was born. As I ran, I prayed for this to be some kind of tasteless nightmare.
But it wasn't a dream.
My heart and lungs hurt so badly it felt like they were shredding. It was a pain that transcended the dimensions of dreams. I was surpassed at the extreme fervor of my own breathing. It hurt no matter how much air I sucked in. As I ran down Dungan Hill, I finally caught sight of the 107 building. By now my legs had gone unsteady. My body felt astoundingly heavy. Even so, I forced my feet to keep moving forward. I could no longer afford to keep an eye on my surroundings. On the contrary, the entirety of my consciousness was focused on the pedestrian scramble that symbolized Shibuya. A little longer. No, just a little longer. Once I passed 107, I'd be right there. The largest in Japan. It was the place in Japan where the largest number of people came swarming together all at once, moving simultaneously with changing of the traffic signals, which it was why I had to get to the scramble. The scramble. Empty. The Shibuya Station Plaza, which you could survey from the Y-shaped road in front of 107. A soundless world, a dead-seeming world. This space was supposed to be flooded with sound, was now governed by silence. All I could hear was my own ragged breathing. In the middle of the wide street, I fell heavily to my knees, and I couldn't walk any further than this. Shock had drained all the strength from my body. Right, left, front, back, everywhere. No one was there, even though 7 on a Saturday night was the time when Shibuya ought to be the most crowded of all. What was happening? It was a lie. This had to be a lie. I closed my eyes and nursed my head. This was a dream, an illusion. There's no way this could be reality. Yes, I had thought I wanted to live a quiet and peaceful life by myself. I didn't want anyone in the middle with me, and I didn't want to get involved in anything. But I hadn't wished for a world without anyone else in it. If no one was there, who would pay for my living expenses? If no one was there, who would make convenience store box lunches for me to eat? If no one was there, who would play ESO with me? If no one was there... A sound. I heard it. I heard a sound. It wasn't me. Someone else had made it. Someone was out. Someone was here. Someone other than me was close by here. I felt like I had reached salvation. As I thought, I had coincidentally happened to appear like no one was there. In truth, not one person had disappeared. I hadn't been left behind in the world, all alone. You're gonna look up, it's gonna be Remy. $5 says. I was so relieved I almost cried. I sent a gaze in the direction the sound came from. No.
Not Remy.
The one There was a boy a short distance away from me, though still in the middle of the crossing. He sat quietly in place. At the moment, I couldn't tell quite how old he was. Going by the size of his body, he could only have been an elementary school student. And because his hat was pulled down low over his eyes, I couldn't see much of his expression. Except, the boy's voice sounded particularly clear to me, feeling as though he'd whispered right into my ear. I unintentionally whirled around but of course there was no one behind me.
Eat it last.
Though he was younger than me, I found myself speaking formally.
どうして誰もいないのか君は理由を知ってますか 知ってるよ
Despite the fact that his voice sounded young, there was nothing childish about its ambience.
それより僕のメッセージは受け取ってくれた
Message? I didn't know what he was talking about.
誰だ君は
The moved his wheelchair a tiny bit forward, perhaps because it was old. Simply going forward made it let out a rusty noise.
その目誰の目でしょ
I was confused. Why had this boy murmured whose eyes are those eyes, here and now? What in the world was he?
目覚めるんだ早く出ないと
早く
もっとたくさんの人が死んじゃうことになるから君は一体
I rubbed my eyes, wiping away my tears. Thanks to that, I was finally able to take a clear look at the boy's face. It's himself.
It's a raisin.
Oh lordy. This boy wasn't even a boy. His skin was wrinkled as an old man's. His cheeks were gaunt. His eye sockets were sunken to a sickly extent. His eyes were clouded. He had no eyebrows. And his body was as small as a child's.
将軍だよ
For a second, I forgot to breathe. My head rocked with an impact akin to that of being struck by a hammer. The ground shook. No, my body was tilting. I splayed a hand on the asphalt, holding myself up. Just now, what had he said? Shogun. He was
忘れない
Shogun.
で君は逃げちゃいけない
I raised my head and watched as Shogun, who had already turned his back to me, left. His wheelchair creaked as it slowly receded into the distance. I thought about chasing after him and demanding all kinds of answers from him. But I didn't think of telling him, how dare you get me involved and hitting me. That sort of thing didn't agree with me.
How dare you get involved and hit him?
My head had started aching. The area around my temple stopped sharply. I curled into the fetal position and endured the pain.
タク
A single noise began to spread throughout the soundless world. Whose voice was this? Don't look at me. The thing that had been a noise gradually transmuted into a real voice. Someone had placed a gentle hand on my shoulder.
邪魔なんだっつうの
何してんだろうね
最近の若いもんは
なんかのパフォーマンスじゃないの
Fighting with my headache, I raised my gaze. The demon girl, Remy, was crouching over me, peering into my face. Clear eyes filled with life, eyes that looked wholeheartedly at me, only at me. Again, this girl had appeared so suddenly.
歩ける歩いて
She slipped her hand around my side and tried to make me stand up. I shrieked and shook her off. Coming back to myself, I looked around. As before, I was in the middle of the road, but it wasn't empty anymore. There were people 360 degrees around me in every direction, and they all walked whichever way they pleased without showing any interest in me. Looking as if she were about to cry, Rumi extended a hand toward me.
今は私の言うことを聞いて。夜だ!
When I yelled, the throbbing in my head changed to the direct pain. Even so, intense and uncaring, I crawled to open more distance between me and Rimi.
お前だろ。お前が見せたんだ。お前の妄想だ。僕の心を支配して精神攻撃を。この悪魔め。お前なんて剣で殺してやる。ベースに帰れば僕には理想。
A rough shock shot through my cheek. It stung and began to go hot. Rumi had slapped me.
Slap.
She was going to kill me for sure now. On all fours, I scrambled this way and that across the ground, but Rumi grabbed my hand in a flash. She pulled me toward her with a strength I found to be unbelievable, coming from a girl. She embraced me. Her soft form enveloped me tenderly. She was very warm. She smelled ever so faintly of sweat. Her smooth, shining hair tickled the end of my nose. With the wind of my out of my sails, my whole body threatened to go limp.
ここにいたら危ないよ。
There was a slight catch to her voice. I didn't know whether or not she was crying.
信号赤になっちゃってるから。
Because the light's turning red. She didn't intend to kill me. Why was she helping me? That hallucination from earlier, where all the people in Shibuya vanished, it wasn't something she'd made me see? When I sensed such kind-hearted warmth, when she hugged me without the least bit of malice, it had the effect of shaking everything I'd believed up till now. It made me think maybe Sekihata Rimi wasn't a demon after all. Was I foolish? Was she pulling the wool over my eyes? Except, one thing alone had become certain. With Rimi holding me, I felt incredibly relieved. I didn't know what to call this peculiar situation. Whatever. Upon letting go of me, Rimi clasped my face in her hands and looked at me steadily again. Her eyes were a little reddish.
今は私についてきていい?
Somehow, I ended up nodding. Right now, we were standing all alone in the middle of the crossing that everyone had vacated. The vast numbers of people waiting on the sidewalk for the light to change were paying close attention to us. I heard laughing voices come from here and there. Myriad cars pointed their headlights at us and began blaring their horns. Remy took a firm grip on my hand and began running toward the sidewalk. I followed in her wake as she pulled me. As the honking horn scattered across us, we made it to the sidewalk. Remy let out a relieved breath and pulled up short. She was still holding my hand. That by itself made my heart grow calmer and calmer. I wanted to give myself over to this serenity. I wanted to stay like this forever. Remy turned back in my direction.
無事でよかったね。
She smiled as though she were tremendously happy. I didn't think that expression of hers was a lie or an act. But
話してよ。
because up until now I had been utterly hostile toward her, because I had thought she was a demon. If I let her win me over, I felt like I'd cease being myself.
あ、ごめんごめん。
She quickly dropped her hand.
それにしてもびっくりした。タクが道の真ん中でうずくまってるんだもん。信号が赤になった時はどうなることかと。
I turned my back to Remy as she began talking cheerfully. I walked off, winding my way through the hordes of people.
僕、帰る。
あ、じゃあ送るよ。具合悪いんでしょ？
Her voice followed me from behind, but I shook my head and refused her.
タク。
The cheerfulness had vanished from Remy's voice. I felt awful since she had done so much to help me. So
ありがとう。
I just barely managed to squeeze out those two words.
I got to this one.
To think that the three investigative teams would actually be combined into one. Ban Yusuji ruminated bitterly over this as he gazed out upon the detectives gathered in the Shibuya Police Department's large conference room. The Inokoshira Line Shibuya Station Public Bathroom Homicide, or as the media called it with amusement, the Vampire House case, had led to a truly grave personnel shortage. With three brutal murder cases having occurred in the same jurisdiction and in close succession, the chances of them all being the work of the same criminal were at last growing higher. Did you leave my door open?
Yeah.
Why?
Because the dog wanted out.
To open the door, let the dog out, and close the door. Why you leave the door open?
His dinner is just about ready.
You realize when dinner is, we're gonna end the stream, right? I'm not gonna have time after dinner to play. Some argued that the Cornelius Tower Group's suicide case should be left to the juvenile division, but due to how the media treated it as part of New Gen, there was the possibility that the police would become the targets of criticism if they made it an exception. And so it was perhaps natural that the central office had selected the one choice remaining to them, which was to combine the various investigation headquarters. At the moment, as part of the interrogation process, these sequential New Gen cases were being re-examined one by one. The screen at the head of the conference room reflected a series of photographs of the crime scene. Suwa had been singled out to explain everything. What'd she say?
Nothing.
Yesterday, the two of them had stayed up all night putting their heads together over documents related to the 4 cases. Good work, Bon muttered internally, chin propped up on his hands.
コーネリアスタワー集団投身自殺事件の発生は 9月7日っす。です。ニュージェネとマスコミが故障している4つの事件の中では一番最初に発生してます。午後11時半頃、渋谷コーネリアスタワー屋上のヘリポートから男女5人が転落。
And that's where we will save. Yep. No. Okay. I want to thank anybody that joined me today. I will hope to see you guys in the next stream, and I gotta go once I find my OBS. Have a good night, guys. Bye.